Hi, Chris Montalbano with Pilgrim Title here at the closing table, and we're doing another episode of TOD Talks Title. And today, Todd's talking title with Ruth Dillingham. Ruth is an attorney extraordinaire in the field of mortgage and closing compliance. She speaks to trade industries and trade groups and consults with lenders and mortgage companies. I guess that's the same thing, but lenders of all stripes, banks, mortgage companies, and title insurance companies, settlement agents on various compliance and loan closing issues. So, speaking of the closing, first of all, thank you for coming.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Speaking of the closing, when I started, there was a HUD settlement statement that was 3 pages or 2 pages with 3 carbon copies. I guess we don't do that anymore?
No, not
Okay. Well, that's too bad. I used to like using the hand calculator, and I remember the old guys saying, that'll never change. You're never going to be able to walk into the closing with a completed settlement statement, right, and all of that. And so that's changed. But now, after that, 20 years after that sort of evolution, we're on the cusp of another sort of watershed moment in digitizing the closing.
Yes.
So I guess the obvious question for me, now that I'm one of those old guys, is, will this really ever happen?
Usually in parentheses right after that is, so am I retiring next week?
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
So I think particularly in our New England market,
Mm-hmm.
We probably are not going to move with lightning speed from the point of time where you come into a closing with stacks of papers and sign with blue ink and a wet signature on everything,
Mm-hmm.
to buying a house being the equivalent of buying a book at Amazon.
I gotcha.
So there may be parts of the closing process, however, that can be digitized and will benefit from the speed that goes with that.
Sure.
So what I think primarily what we should be prepared for, young and old in the industry, is what's known as a hybrid.
Okay.
Which isn't a car that runs on gas
or the golf club I hit out of the rough.
Right.
Okay. So what hybrid are you speaking of?
I'm speaking of a closing transaction where some of the documents can be executed digitally, electronically, but some of them still get wet signatures.
Okay.
Some of them may be done on a computer, some of them may be done face to face.
And I've actually gotten this question when I've used that expression, wet signature. That's taking the pen and
Yes, literally writing your name.
In cursive.
Yeah. So, if you think about, for instance, and I've recently done this, so I can say it happens. If you think about, for instance, applying for car insurance.
Yeah.
If you go online, the insurer wants you to sign certain documents. You type your name,
Right.
and it assigns a font that looks somewhat cursive.
Right.
And then every time you need to sign your name, you hit enter on your keyboard.
Yeah.
And something that looks nothing like Chris Montalbano's real signature
Right.
gets appended to the document.
Gotcha.
But in a disclaimer at the front, you said, yes, this will represent my signature.
This is me.
Now, if you think about some of the documents at the closing table, the federal lead paint disclosure, a town notice about when sewer bills are due,
Right.
a whole host of not so big contractual
Right.
documents,
Correct.
why not deliver those to the consumer the day before the closing and let them simply click enter
Right.
to append their signature?
And then at that point, you've come to the closing and you've taken a lot of time away from sitting here around the
Yes.
closing table. And not that this has ever happened to me, it also would seem that avoids the whole, in the middle of document 22 and 24 was document 23, and that just got stuck, and I never got that signed.
Right.
At closing, and now post-closing, I've got to go and
Exactly.
find that borrower and get that re-signed.
And it also solves the problem of the person who puts their middle initial on half the documents, and
That's a great point.
or junior,
Right.
or adds doctor at the
Okay.
front. So once you've picked that digital signature,
That's it.
that goes through. So that's one thing I think we can expect.
Mhm.
The other is an electronic signature, actually in a face-to-face transaction.
Okay.
So again, it's comparable to being, say, at a department store.
Right.
I pick up a stylus
Yeah.
and write on a glass,
Yeah.
and that looks like my signature,
Gotcha.
but it isn't wet.
Right. Right.
So that's another now it's an electronic document that I've signed, but not using pen and ink.
Gotcha.
And then, of course, there's the whole question is, are we face to face?
Mhm.
And I know you've discussed,
Remote online notarization
Right.
and signatures, yeah, correct.
so remote signatures would be the case in a hybrid,
Mhm.
where I signed off on a Rhode Island disclosure about,
So it's picking the title insurance agent.
yeah, something like that.
Gotcha.
So that's remote.
Yeah.
I'm not sitting in front of anyone doing it,
Mhm.
but it's also not contractual,
Right.
and it doesn't go to the underpinnings of transfer of title and
Gotcha.
signing up for the mortgage.
Gotcha.
So I think where we should be prepared is for hybrids,
Mhm.
and I think the best advice is for everyone counseling a buyer borrower to be alert that your lender may be sending you some stuff
Mhm.
on your email.
Gotcha.
Be alert for those things, but you may also be dealing with a closing attorney who wants you to come into the office.
And talk about the really big documents,
Yes.
you know, the stuff that needs to be notarized, the deed, the mortgage, the really big documents.
Right.
I think it's important to note that, and this is in our prior Ron discussion, no New England states have authorization for RON, remote online notarizations, correct?
That is correct.
At this point. Some of them are toying with it. I believe the closest is maybe Virginia. And we discussed this in more detail in the prior Ron, but what I think lenders and title agents, et cetera, need to be concerned about is people, say, from Virginia, maybe doing a deal in Rhode Island, and they might want to do that remotely. Well, we can't do it here, and if you attempt it here, first of all, I don't know how you get that sort of thing recorded, but it's not permitted here. But the hybrid, you know, the stack of documents that have their own importance, but maybe don't rise to contractual or legal obligation levels, we can do that in advance with a point and click of the mouse or however it's done, and then still come in and that gives us time to get through the important documents, the ones that really have obligations, and make sure that folks
Yes.
understand everything.
Yep, and that's what I think you should be expecting to see so you don't have to retire yet.
Okay, well, I got 2 kids in college, so that's good to know. Thank you for joining us for TOD Talks Title with Ruth Dillingham, and we were talking a little bit about where we're going with this whole closing process from the closing table. Take care.